from Councilmember GREGGOR ILAGAN dated May 23rd, 2016, transmitting proposed amendments to decrease the Engineering Division other current expenses account by $120,000, Albizia Unsafe Flora, and increase the Engineering Division salary and wages account by adding a new line item for Arborist services, $80,000, and Engineering Division equipment account by adding a new line item for Arborist equipment, $40,000.
State that this communication is to enhance the Albizia program as well as potentially address the prevention of the spread of the rapid ohia death. I had a long discussion with the mayor, and this is how this idea came to be.
The question is, what are we doing right now with the Albizia, well, the Unsafe Flora program, right? Presently, what we have is our regulatory engineering inspectors respond to complaints that are filed in our office of potentially hazardous trees between neighboring properties, so private properties. Our inspectors will go out and respond to the complaint and to the best of their ability determine if the tree is a bona fide hazard or it is not a hazard. If it is a hazard, then contact will be made with the property owner for which the tree is on that property. In many cases, the property owners will take care of the potentially of the hazardous tree if it's declared to be a potential. If the potentially hazardous tree is declared to be hazardous, in imminent danger of falling on the private property, we will notify the property owner. In many cases, the property owner will take care of the hazardous tree. In some cases, it's very difficult to locate the owner because they are absentee owners. They don't necessarily reside on the island of Hawaii, so we try to make contact with them. If they do not respond and so it is declared hazardous, then we would go through the process and perhaps eventually remove the tree and bill the property owner accordingly. So that is the present program. So thus far we have not had to exercise or gotten to that last stage where the county forces have removed the hazardous tree. The amendment that is being proposed right now would fund the arborist position. So what does that give us? That gives us someone that is qualified to make a determination based on the species of the tree, the growth of the tree, the location of the tree, to give us a better determination if that potentially hazardous tree is hazardous or non-hazardous at that point in time. And that would be very helpful. Having an arborist, a certified arborist, or even an educated, trained arborist.
I'm supporting this amendment, and the reason why I'm supporting it is because I'm going through a situation right now in my district where we need an arborist. Now, time is of the essence because the tree is kind of leaning towards the gym and ready to take down that gym. And but right now, as it stands, that we would have to go out for bid, and that whole process takes a long time. Now, if we had somebody in-house, but I understand this is under DPW. On Parks and Recreation, should we have an emergency where a situation we need an arborist, we could use the arborist that is under the DPW department?
Although the arborist is under the slotted in the Department of Public Works, that person is available for anyone in the county to use.
Okay, and in this situation, and I'm glad it's not just for Albizia, because this is actually a banyan tree that a homeowner saying that the county's tree is lifting up his foundation. So he hasn't made a formal complaint yet, but in this case, it's like, so we're trying to save the tree because the community doesn't want it down, but we cannot keep cutting one side because it started leaning towards the gym. And so we need an arborist to say, can we save this tree? Can it be groomed enough to be able to be safe?
The $120,000 for unsafe trees. So basically, what? You guys don't need it.
Basically, the $120,000 plus that's in this year's budget was inserted in a budget in the event that upon the complaint being processed and the property owner is unresponsive to taking care of a hazardous tree, that fund was for the county to go in and contract for the tree
Yeah.
removal.
So again, you need them or you don't need them.
We need it, but we haven't gotten to the point where all the process or the legal process has been exhausted through the judicial system.
So then my next question is, are you in favor of this amendment?
I am in favor of this amendment to get an arborist or a specialist on board, and also I think that once the arborist is on board, he will be making more determinations, whether it be a complete removal, a partial removal, how do you treat this, and then next year, I expect I will bump this back up to the original budgetary amount.
Okay, so then where the other $80,000 going to come from then for the arborist, or $120,000?
Well, subject to council approval, and the mayor at that time, hopefully from the general fund, yes.
What's going to be the process that you guys are going to implement for the use of this arborist? 'Cause I tell you right now, I'm kind of leaning towards voting no on this, okay? Unless you guys can convince me, as to the need of it. Because this is a big ticket position now. And we don't know what kind of pool of arborists we're looking at out there. I know we have arborists. I mean, every time we're here, we listen to some people testifying, and I've heard at least 5 people say they're arborists, right? What do you guys do now if you need an arborist? Contract.
We have the ability to contract, but primarily we use our engineering inspectors from the regulatory section who are well versed in clearing, grubbing, building of roads, but not necessarily sort of have the level of knowledge or education as a arborist,
Yeah.
certified arborist,
So-
or even a school-trained arborist,
So
or someone
why-
with a lot of experience.
So why haven't you contracted for an arborist when the need arises instead of using your inspectors?
We have on very few occasions.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much does the arborist cost?
Well, depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a
Well, at one time.
certified I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said one time you guys used them. So what?
Well, they charge by the hour, so it's several $100s an hour.
Yeah. I mean, and do you think if we contracted out for the arborist, would it be more cost effective than having an arborist in-house?
I think it would be more cost effective to have an arborist in-house, because although the arborist will be assigned to the engineering department primarily for regulatory addressing complaints, the arborist could also be used for Parks and Recreation, also my highways division. They do a lot of tree trimming, so a lot of times an arborist would be very good should be there to say that, are you trimming the tree correctly? Are you trimming enough of the tree? Are you if you trim so much, will the tree die? Those type of decisions pretty much are left up to the highway crew right now doing the tree trimming. So certainly having that arborist as a broad spectrum of duties, other than just the unsafe flora bill. Yeah.
My constituents are very concerned about the overcutting and basically making the choice, well, let's just cut it down. The North Kohala King Kamehameha Park is really devastated, and it, as well as my constituents just going there, it's hard for me to even be there right now. So many majestic trees were cut down that will strategically placed. So I'm glad that it was clarified that the arborist would not just be available to Public Works. At the same time, I've also been concerned with the number of trees, cut down along the highway where I felt that they could be trimmed, or people that I know that are arborists felt some of these big older trees could be trimmed, and then they're cut down and they're humongous and there's not one bit of rot there, and they add so much character. And I think it's all in terms of like our sense of place and our sense of culture and relationship to nature. And I'm glad to hear that. I know that there was the Parks and Rec were talking about cutting down completely the two humongous monkey paw trees that are behind the King Kamehameha statue in North Kohala because of concern that a branch would fall across the road to the police station, and that worried, well, if we cut a branch here, maybe we have to worry the tree's going to fall this way. And so since they don't have the knowledge, maybe we have to cut it down. So I said, well, before you do that, I'm going to use whatever contingency funds or figure out some way. But I think that this is an issue that's coming up not as one incident, in which case I would lean towards what Councilmember Chung brought up. But, it really has to do with what kind of environment and what kind of sense of place we want on this island.
I did use the services of Public Works for addressing an unsafe tree in our district recently, and I want to commend their department for a job well done. That individual had been wanting some attention brought to that tree, because I also went up and took some pictures and looked. This was not only the power lines that were at risk, but also perhaps homes. So I think there's some considerations that have to be taken in terms of what the county is going to do in addressing its trees. I would support an arborist wholeheartedly, because that professional could really make a good assessment, not only on the health of the tree, but what else could be occurring with certain trees. We might not see it at the surface, but maybe underneath there's termite infestation or something. But these individuals could address things that we wouldn't consider.
I'm just curious, how many complaints does your department receive for these trees?
Little over 100 in process. I would say 100 filed. I would say that, and I had the numbers yesterday.
That's okay.
But about,
average is good.
about 30 to 50% when the property owner was notified, they took care of it on their own. We even had kind of digressing here, we even had a inquiry from a property owner from Japan saying, can you help me find an arborist? And we said, well, we cannot recommend anyone to you, but if you call someone here in this other office, that's not related to government, they probably can help you. So they want to, if they're notified, and these are the absentee owners. And there are those that are adamant that maybe it's a neighbor doesn't like a neighbor, or the neighbor doesn't respond. Then I think you need to go through the full process, which would be very time consuming.
Right.
And then if the property owner that has a hazardous tree, which is declared hazardous, not potentially hazardous, then the county would need to step in.
Because there have been issues with cutting of large trees, and because the island is so beautiful and the trees grow big fast, and people get attached to the trees as, visible parts of the community ambiance. Somebody had me and actually gave me some examples of legislation in other beautiful cities and counties in the state that, well, not just in the state, in the nation, that have tree ordinances, whereas if a tree meets a certain size, the girth of the tree, then different laws come into play, where they've enacted such laws as if the tree has to be cut, for some safety reasons, that several more trees equaling that girth of, smaller trees but equaling to that would have to be planted in other public places to replace the one that has to come out.
We kind of struggle with what do we need to do with the trees on Anikeo-Kololi Highway. At some point, they're going to get very big. But what shape should they be pruned to now? And that's where an arborist would be very helpful. Also with the guidelines or the criteria we have for complete streets, I think any new road that the county builds is going to have buffer zones, going to have bioswales, it's going to have landscaping. So this is where an arborist input up front would be very helpful also, not only for the unsafe flora, but contributing to the how do we plan. And I think you bring up a good point about replacing trees. I mean, that would be something maybe the planning department would be willing to look at, because they come up with, the list of trees which are native trees, indigenous trees, and they have a list of approved trees for planting on public places.
You mentioned about this contract services that the money going to be taken out of, and you're saying at the next budget you're going to be proposing to put it back in, or you're talking about the next administration's budget that they're going to have to do?
Right now, we have a certain amount that we anticipate. We know what on average, what a contracted cost to remove a tree. Maybe a tree could be anywhere from 80 to 100 feet tall, and it may be leaning, or it could be close to being uprooted. So we took that as an estimate. Let's say it takes $20,000 to $30,000 to remove a tree, and assuming that we had some number of trees that got to be removed, like 50 to 100. That's how we came up with that budgetary amount. So what I'm saying is that even though for this next fiscal year's budget, if we want to take away, use that fund, redesignate some of those funds for an arborist and equipment for the arborist, then I think the determination is going to be: have we been? Do we see enough hazardous trees? Are we going to see more hazardous trees that need to be removed? And then I think we would make that determination when we come into the next budget cycle, which would be FY 18, 17, 18. Yeah, now we're in 16, 17.
But see, my question is,
So it could go up, or it
Right.
could go back to the original amount,
But-
or maybe it could be less. Yeah?
we might not be here, you and I.
I will not be here.
Yeah, right.
yes.
So it's hard to say about how you're going, the budget for that next fiscal year,
Right.
right? But then, so to me, I would hope that, because Mr. Chair, we have one more hearing for this budget, or this is the last? This is the last and final. Because I would rather see you keep your funding, but somehow create another position within either Public Works, Parks and Rec, Planning, or R&D to have this position in. Because, I know Parks and Rec does utilize the services. And to me, they have, I think, more trees. And I know this was brought up because of the lehua, the ohia trees, right? The rapid ohia dead tree, which this is supposed to come and help out in coordinating with that. But then to make it permanent and to listen to what happened, to your comments that you said, that could help with Parks and Rec and so forth. And then like you just mentioned about planning, they have, I guess when they, like you said, complete streets. That's going to be part of their decisions on how the landscaping might be, right? When Public Works and Planning works together. Also, I look at it where in the past, and not this administration, because I think this administration got the different departments working together as one. Okay, the past administrations wasn't. You had like Public Works by themselves, you had Parks and Rec by themselves, you had Planning by themselves, and then if there was a job where it was on a county facility, and it was say Parks and Recreation responsibility, Public Works wouldn't help, and so PNR, Parks and Rec, would have to purchase or rent equipment and so forth to go and fix it, where we had the in-house capabilities of working together. But like I said, it's not this administration. This administration brought people together, right? Because Public Works works, what I understand, great with Parks and Rec, right? You guys work hand in hand, correct?
Yes, we work hand in glove. I think we do more work with Parks and Recreation than Public
Well, I don't want
Works
to get there.
sometimes.
I don't want to get there. But I mean, because you guys did a great job at the Civic. You guys paved that whole area. I mean, it helped the county a lot, right? But so that's why, it's hard to predict what's going to happen with this next administration and where this position going to be very crucial.
And I want to bring up Deputy Corporation Counsel Jennifer Ng, because she can shed light on why we're not even using a dime from this fund.
Approximately $1,000 was spent to effect personal service. As Director Lee indicated, one of the concerns was for landowners that were not available or not making themselves available for notice purposes. So some of those funds have been expended to provide personal service to these property owners. As far as moving these matters through the judicial process, as Director Lee indicated, cases that have gone through the NOV process were referred to our office. So we do have a number of cases that are pending, and I believe I spoke to the Deputy Corporation Counsel handling those matters. They're being reviewed to make sure that everything is in place. Because, as we indicated, this is a newer program, we have to make sure that when we go to either the court or to the Board of Appeals, that we have the ability to properly prove our cases. So it's my understanding that we do have one matter actually that is being prepared for a lawsuit to be filed, and we anticipate that shortly. So as far as the expenditure of funds, we're going through the process, and so it is a lengthy process. We have to make sure notice is proper, that we have the particular situation involved where we do have unsafe flora. So while the arborist position will definitely strengthen our ability to make these cases, we are nevertheless using the available code sections and the engineers that we have through Public Works to make these cases go forward. So it is in the process. As far as the funding, we anticipate needing the funds to address landowners or property owners who aren't able to or are unwilling to address it themselves. But thus far, we've been pleased to see that there was a lot of voluntary compliance on the part of these property owners to resolve these issues on their own.
Is there enough work for this arborist, and does it warrant an arborist? And from what we heard, it really does.
I think it's a start of something that we could potentially, grow into the future as separate from the department, something that says that we really do care about what's going on Hawaii Island in terms of how we move forward with either tree cutting or tree planting, or there's a huge possibility. Honolulu has a big division that they have a lot of positions available for the department. So I think it's going in the right direction, and I will support your amendment, Mr. ILAGAN.